The only time I ever use a tincture is with a low dose herb.
I'm just putting myself in the shoes of the average consumer and how complicated it is out there.
And the bottom line is if I'm going to get a placebo effect from something, I don't want to pay $75 a day for it. Welcome to Herbalism Uncensored, the podcast where we dig deep into the world of herbalism and natural healing. I'm Alicia.
And I'm Lila. We're two clinical herbalists who recognize the need for honest and authentic conversations about the state of natural healing today. As practitioners, we feel called to have uncensored discussions about why people aren't finding relief and what to do about it.
If you're frustrated by lack of results, overwhelmed by conflicting advice online, disillusioned by the commercialization of wellness, or simply passionate about natural healing, you're in the right place.
This podcast is our way of cutting through the noise, busting myths, and challenging marketing gimmicks, all while inspiring real, lasting results for professionals and individuals alike.
We're gonna get real, calling out what works, what doesn't, and why. Our goal is to equip you with the tools to take charge of your health. We're here to help everyone rethink clinical success and achieve better outcomes.
We're honored to be here and feel privileged to contribute to the realistic and functional growth of our professions, one where they effectively support all people on their journeys to feel better.
This is Herbalism Uncensored,
where together we're nurturing the future of natural healing.
The contents of this podcast are for informational purposes only and are not intended to be a substitute in any way for professional medical advice, treatment, or diagnosis. It's important that you always seek the advice of your physician or other licensed healthcare provider with any questions or concerns you may have regarding a medical condition.
Today, we are talking about tinctures, one of the most popular forms of herbal medicine out on the market today. When you walk into your health food store and you see all the tiny bottles of liquid with the droppers, those are tinctures, and I'm sure you're pretty familiar with them. But today, we're going to explain what tinctures are, why we're talking about them, some of their limitations, when it's appropriate to use them, and all the fun stuff in between. So, Alicia, can you start off by telling our listeners what exactly is a tincture? What's going on there?
They usually come in bottles that look like this, although usually smaller. This is a 4-ounce bottle. So usually when you see them in the grocery store, they're 1-ounce bottles. So a tincture is just one way to extract the medicinal constituents from an herb. We have a lot of ways to do extractions. Oftentimes when you buy an extract in a pill, it's been extracted in a lab with hexane. You can make herbal teas. You can boil things and make decoctions, or you can let things steep overnight like a tea and make an infusion, and that extracts the water soluble constituents of the plant. With a tincture, we are using alcohol to extract the medicinal constituents from the plant. Now, because we're using alcohol, we're really only getting the constituents that are alcohol soluble. So sometimes, and in any alcohol, there's going to be some water. Most tinctures are going to be at least a 1-to-4 ratio. So that means that for every 4 milliliters of liquid, there is 1 gram of herb product. And they're usually anywhere from 40 to 60% alcohol, which means that they're anywhere from 60 to 40% water. Sometimes there's acid added, like vinegar or citric acid, to get the acid soluble constituents out. Sometimes there's a little glycerin added to get the glycerin soluble constituents out, but usually it's alcohol and water. Is that tracking?
Yeah, definitely. So, there's a lot of ways to take herbal medicine, right? There's capsules, powders, teas, tinctures. Alicia mentioned extracts, and they all have their pros and cons. And today we're going to talk about tinctures and all of the intricacies that go into that. So, Alicia, do you want to kind of touch on also why it is we are tackling tinctures and why we think this is such an important episode for the people?
I think tinctures are, one, really popular, and two, really misunderstood. And not just by the consumers. I think that they're also either misunderstood or disregarded by manufacturers of herbal medicine. Yes.
Yes, and all this equates to people not necessarily getting what they need from the medicine they're taking. And when we don't use things properly, it leads to them being ineffective, which I think is pretty prevalent right now in the marketplace. So, some of the reasons that tinctures are so popular, despite their challenges that we're about to get into, are one, it's a very commercially viable product, right? We mentioned earlier, it's a great way to preserve herbs. So they're preservable, they're easy to package, they're easy to ship, they're easy to put labels on and put in the stores. It's very convenient for the businesses that want to sell and manufacture herbal products.
Yeah,
Really.
if I have something like this, if I've got loose herb in a bag, I've got to worry about it losing its potency. I have to worry about it growing mold on it. I have to worry about beetles getting into it. I don't have to worry about that with with something that's 40% or 60% alcohol.
Exactly. They're also really easy to make. So a lot of herbalists enjoy making their own medicine, and it's pretty low technology to make a tincture. Now, we can get into that a little bit more later because while it is easy to make, they are very complicated at the same time. But I think it's a low entry point for people to start making their own medicine. Alicia, I know when I started, dabbling in herbalism, I started making tinctures. And looking back now, I know this bottle of willow's bark tincture I've made is so ineffective. I'd have to probably drink a third of what I'm holding up right now, which is probably I can't even do that math, but I'd have to get drunk to get an effective dose of this willow's bark.
Your headache would be gone and you'd be buzzing.
Yeah, and don't even ask me what ratio I used because I didn't use a ratio. I just poured, and so I have no idea the strength or the potency of what I made.
Hmm. So
Mhm.
you did the folk method.
I did the folk method.
So tell us about the folk method.
So
What
the
is the folk
folk
method for
let
making
me
tinctures?
yeah, let me tell you about the folk method. You get the herb, the dried herb. You can do it with fresh herb. I don't have access to fresh herb, so I got dried herb. Put in a bottle. I think fill it to the top and then cover it with alcohol. No weighing, no figuring out the ratio, no adding anything else to make sure it's extracted. It's just you get your 40%, your 40 proof alcohol, you put it over the herb, you let it sit for a couple months, and then, you strain it and you have medicine.
You're making me think of an I have a story about folk method tincturing that I'll tell later.
Is it gonna be our professor making fun of me for doing it this way?
He did, he laughed at you.
He did. That was a real growing moment back then. Yeah, so they're popular for a lot of reasons, and I think it really does go back to easy to preserve, people are familiar with them, they're easy to market, they're easy to sell. They're aesthetic. People think of tinctures and they think of that apothecary aestheticism, and people like that.
Yeah, it looks really cool when you see a shelf with a bunch of little bottles with droppers on them. And also, I think people think that they are stronger than they are because when you're drinking alcohol, there's an effect that you feel immediately. And I don't know about you, but if I take something like a skull cap tincture before bed, I'm not exactly tuned in enough with the tincture to tell how much of the effect is from the skull cap and how much of the effect is from the alcohol that I just drank.
Oh, I feel the same way. I'm very sensitive to alcohol, so I'm like, "Oh, I feel something in my throat's on fire." 'Cause
Yeah, burn.
exactly. But you brought up our first really great point about one of the most common misconceptions about tinctures, and that is that people think they're very potent medicine. So if you go read blogs or you're on the internet or you're talking to people out and about, tinctures are touted as potent medicine. Alicia, do you agree?
Super concentrated herbal medicine. That is not true.
That is not true.
I would argue that essential oils are super concentrated herbal medicine, but tinctures are not.
Okay, I would love to demonstrate this and show people tangibly what is actually in the contents of a tincture bottle and how it's not potent medicine. And so, Alicia, when I look at a bottle of tincture I have in front of me, the dosing is 2.5 milliliters. So that's 2.5 droppers full. What do you think of that?
2.5 milliliters. What's the concentration?
1 to 5.
1 to 5. So 2.5 milliliters is a half a gram?
Closer
Yeah,
to
that means there's 1 gram in 5 milliliters. So 2.5 milliliters is a half a gram. It's 500 milligrams.
Yep.
So is it a calamus tincture?
No. No, let's
Okay, well then yeah, you might as well just like drink some water. Or
well, let's
just take 2.5 milliliters of vodka. That's what I think.
the dose on the bottle isn't actually anywhere near a therapeutic dose, is what we're getting at. The dose on the bottle is such a minuscule amount of the actual herb that you're trying to take that for a lot of herbs that are commonly used, it's almost laughable.
What is the herb? What kind of
Nettle.
can we see the bottle?
Yeah, I got a nice little nettle tincture right here.
Oh yeah, the little Sprouts brand nettle tincture.
Don't ask me why I have it. I don't know where it came from. I just found it in my apothecary.
Oh, I'm trying to think. Okay. So nettle. Yeah, that's like 1/30th or 1/60th of a dose.
I'd have to take a lot of tinctures to get an effective dose. Which brings us to our next problem is that tinctures are kind of expensive.
They're really expensive. And they're more expensive here than they are in Europe. They use tinctures. They use tinctures a lot. They sell them in larger bottles, which if you're really into tinctures, you can call companies like Herb Farm and order a pint of whatever tincture you enjoy taking and get a better price on it. But okay, so how much herb is in one bottle of a 1 to 5 extract?
In a 1 to 5 extract, the amount of herb you're getting is 6 grams of herb. That's
And
dried.
that's dried. And the way that you know this, I think it's important for listeners to understand that when you look on the back of the bottle, where it has the nutrition facts or it says supplement facts on a supplement, and there somewhere along there it will tell you, it'll say 1 semicolon 4, 1 semicolon 5, 1 semicolon 10, and then you know that there's 1 gram. That's, think about a capsule that's 500 milligrams, two of those for that many milliliters of liquid, and one dropper full is 1 milliliter, and a usual 1 ounce bottle has about 30 milliliters in it. So read out the math that you read, the way you read it out to me earlier.
So we took the top 5 most common ratios of tinctures, a 1 to 1 all the way through a 1 to 5 ratio, and we figured out how much herb was in each of these ratios. So in a 1 to 1 tincture, like let's say we have 1 ounce of tincture, that would be an equal weight of herb to make the product. There would be 30 grams of herb. It would be the equivalent to taking 30 grams of that herb. In a 1 to 2 tincture, it would be the equivalent to 15 grams. A 1 to 3 tincture, 10 grams. A 1 to 4 tincture, 7.5 grams. And a 1 to 5 tincture, which I feel like is about the most common you're going to see as a 1 to 5, is 6 grams of herb.
Okay, so how many 1 ounce bottles of tincture? So hawthorn, for example, this is a safe herb. Nobody can hurt themselves with it. It's great for the cardiovascular system. The dose for hawthorn would normally be,
30 grams.
so a normal dose for hawthorn would be 30 grams a day, as tea is how I would usually recommend it, because it makes a tasty tea. It's You drink a pint of this tea a day. It's delicious. It's lovely. How much tincture? 1 to 5. On a 1 to 5 tincture, how many bottles, 1 ounce bottles of tincture would you have to drink a day?
So if I was trying to take Hawthorne at a therapeutic dose and I was dealing with 1 ounce tincture bottles, I would have to take 5 1 ounce tincture bottles. So that's the size I'm holding up. That's 5 ounces of vodka or an equivalent alcohol a day. An average cost of a tincture of hawthorn berry is going to be about $15. So that would cost you about $75 a day, and you'd be drunk. I'd be drunk off 5 shots. I don't know about you, but
Well, yeah, I mean, that's like a glass of wine worth of vodka.
yes.
A martini is 3 ounces, 2.5, 3 ounces. So 5 ounces. Have you ever heard my martini poem?
No.
I like to drink a martini, or maybe two at the most. After three, I'm under the table. After four, I'm under the host. It's like the equivalent of two martinis. That's a Dorothy Parker poem, by the way.
I love it. Well, I would get wrecked off of one martini at this point in my life, so two martinis worth of alcohol would definitely do me in.
Well, I mean, as long as we're talking about misconceptions here, so I had a situation where I ran into a health food store looking for some ginseng recently and got into a conversation with the woman who worked in the health food store because for some reason the only ginseng they had was in tincture form. They had no ginseng capsules, no ginseng extract, except for the alcohol tincture ginseng. Now, I haven't drank alcohol in almost 11 years. So I really stay away from tinctures in general. I've got a couple of things that I take in tincture that I take in real low doses. And so two problems with the whole ginseng tincture. Most of what is in ginseng that you want are the polysaccharides. Polysaccharides are long chains of sugars. You have to know a little bit of science to really get the best benefit from tinctures. And as an herbalist, I also started experimenting with tinctures early on in my herbal career. And I realized that there's a lot of arithmetic and a lot of chemistry involved. When you think of things like ginseng or ashwagandha or astragalus, things that boost your immune system, a lot of times what's in the plant that you want are the polysaccharides. These are long chain carbohydrates. It's a type of sugar. That sugars are soluble in dilute alcohol, but polysaccharides, these longer chains, are not very soluble in alcohol. So I don't want to take my ginseng in a tincture. I'm going to get more bang for my buck if I just actually take the ginseng and swallow the ginseng. And then the other thing was that I didn't want to get into the chemistry of why I wasn't purchasing this tincture with the woman that worked at the health food store. And I just said, I don't drink alcohol. And she said, "Oh, well, you can just put it in water and let it sit for a little while, and all the alcohol will evaporate out."
Did she tell you to put it in boiling water? So for our listeners, that's not how that works.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that I could put a shot of vodka on the counter and come back to it 12 hours later and it'd still have alcohol in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. See, and so the misinformation on tinctures runs very, very deep. And I think you touched on something really important here that I want to reiterate and talk about for a second. And that is that tincturing is not an appropriate method for some herbal medicines. And even so, certain herbs need to be tinctured in a certain way or with other ingredients to make the extract viable. So we have noticed as Alicia and I go out into herb shops or health food stores and we look at what's being tinctured on the shelves, we notice a trend of things that aren't alcohol soluble being tinctured. So people think they're taking this tincture and they're getting the herb, but the active constituents that actually do something in your body aren't present because it's not getting extracted from the alcohol. When you make a tincture, the alcohol must extract the parts of the plant that are what you're looking for, that do the job that you are using that plant for. And if they don't, then you're not going to get the benefit.
That or whatever the menstruum is. I came across this as I was trying to source something for a client. I have a client who is I don't really use tinctures, but I use lobelia tincture as a remove and replace for people to quit smoking. And she's in another country where they have some different laws, and I was looking around on Amazon Australia, and I couldn't find alcohol-based lobelia tincture. Now, what you want from lobelia is an alkaloid. Alkaloids do extract in water, alcohol, and if you really want to get the most out of it, you put a little bit of acid in there. I've had another conversation years ago with a folk herbalist or like somebody doing some wise woman herbalism as I was looking for a lobelia tincture. And I said, "Does your tincture have acid in it?" And she said, "My tincture is the best tincture that there is. I learned how to do it from my grandmother. The herb has been sitting in the alcohol. I think she made it with vodka for 10 years in my basement." And I was like, "That's nice, but, the longer it sits there, you're not gonna extract more." There's a certain point where all of the constituents are extracted, and it's not going to extract anymore with that same estrum, and I said, "Do you have acid in it?" And I got into just several disappointing conversations with different people on eBay and Etsy about looking for a lobelia tincture that might have a little bit of acid in it to extract the most lobely. But I digress. I'm looking for some lobelia tincture for a client in another country, and I can't find anywhere that's made with alcohol. All I can find are glycerites. So that's one of the things that we like to do. We don't want to give our children alcohol, and then in some countries, I guess there are some laws around selling things that have alcohol in them on places like Amazon or in grocery stores. So they just replace the alcohol with glycerin. Well, the alkaloids in lobelia are not extractable in glycerin. The bitter glycosides in dandelion aren't extractable in glycerin. The tannins in arginabark are not extractable in glycerin.
So I spent many years doing health food store herbalism. You know this herb does this thing. You go to the health store, you get a tincture for it, you take it. And I had no idea. And you and I now have years and years of study under our belt going over these things and learning these things, but I'm just putting myself in the shoes of the average consumer and how complicated it is out there. You just referenced looking to buy tinctures off of Etsy and Amazon, eBay, and if you didn't know what you knew and you just bought those tinctures, then you'd probably be buying ineffective tinctures. Or if, we didn't know what we know now, we'd probably go to the herb store and pick up a tincture for herbs that weren't going to give us what we needed out of the medicine. So I see people selling ashwagandha tinctures, echinacea tinctures, lobelia tinctures without the acid to extract the active constituents. Like, how overwhelming must it be a consumer? And to caveat that, like, consumers don't know these things aren't working when they take them because they don't know what to expect from the medicine.
Agree. It's overwhelming. The whole tincture thing is overwhelming. And then we go back to how much of the effect is placebo.
Mm-hmm.
And the bottom line is if I'm going to get a placebo effect from something, I don't want to pay $75 a day for it. Or if I'm getting placebo effect from a small amount, I don't want to pay so much for it. Tinctures are expensive.
They are. And I think what I find disheartening is as a consumer out there on the marketplace, you see someone who is practicing herbalism, you're going to assume they know how to make a tincture. Or you see a big reputable company selling a tincture, you're going to assume and trust that they did it right. And people, I wouldn't know better than to scrutinize these things because people are buying it, people are selling it, then you would intuitively think this thing works, this is, what this is normal, this is how you take it. And it creates so much confusion in the marketplace.
Well, and so here's one simple answer because I know Herb Farm makes good tinctures. And if you call Herb Farm and talk to them, or if you just go to the shelf at the health food store and turn those bottles around and look at what percentage alcohol is in each bottle, you will notice that there is a different percentage of alcohol in each bottle. As the plant with different plants, they use a different percentage of alcohol because they are thinking through the process of what they're trying to extract and how much water and how much alcohol they want in there. They actually don't have acid in their lobelia tincture, but it still works. It probably would work a little bit better if they put acid in it. But that's one way to check is look at the back of the bottles. If you call, one thing that's going on right now is several Ayurveda companies are making tinctures with Ayurvedic herbs. In Ayurveda, they have not traditionally used tinctures. Nobody made a tincture with anything, with any Ayurvedic herb up until 10 or 20 years ago, probably, at least not to sell on the market. And if you talk to them or look at their products and every single one of them has the same percentage of alcohol, then you know that they don't care or they don't know, and they are not taking the time to think through to get the best extraction, to get the best results.
Alicia, I have an
The
interesting question for you. When was the last time you used a tincture with a client?
the woman who was gonna quit smoking,
And before that?
the lobelia tincture, a topical aconite tincture about a year ago.
Okay. I can tell you, I don't think I've, to this point, once I got into clinical practice, recommended a tincture once yet. Like, they are such a small percentage of our practice and what we recommend to clients because of all the limitations we're talking about now.
The only time I ever use a tincture is with a low dose herb. And when I say low dose herb, I mean something that is going to have negative consequences if you take too much of it. Something like lobelia. I mean, because one of the benefits that we didn't talk about with tinctures is that the alcohol helps it to move around the body and saturate the tissues faster because it has that warm, sharp quality to it. So, for instance, if I'm using lobelia for somebody who's having a nicotine craving, they can take lobelia capsules and then they have to wait 30 minutes for it to kick in. But if they take the lobelia tincture, they feel an effect fairly quickly. And a tincture is useful because you can actually take just a dropper full of lobelia tincture and the nicotine craving goes away and you feel a little bit calmer. But if you take too much of it, you're going to get nauseous.
And I fully agree with you, and I think we should highlight that this is a really good use case for using tinctures is these low dose herbs. And I will also caveat this again with if you are using these low dose herbs, you should probably be working with a practitioner because as Alicia mentioned, these are the things that have side effects or consequences if you're not dosing them correctly. But they do lend themselves really well to be used in tinctures because you can get to smaller dosages easier.
Well, yeah, things like, things that are toxic where you can actually put one drop in a glass of water and take a tablespoon out of that glass of water. And these are things that I don't think that a layman or just your average consumer can go and purchase some of these low dose herbs. I know you got an account with Heron Botanicals, right? And you had to show them some proof of your education, didn't you?
Yes, they have a restricted herb section, and you must be a qualified practitioner to get access to those herbs. So, for the most part, I would agree. You're correct. These aren't things you're necessarily going to go pick up off the shelf, other than lobelia. You can go buy that in the grocery store, but these aren't the things that you're just going to stumble across or someone's going to tell you to go take.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only time I would use a tincture is lobelia and things like aconite, belladonna, which I have used aconite with clients topically.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay, let's bring this full circle and recap. The tinctures, although very, very popular, have some limitations, and those limitations are they're not always the best extraction method for the herb being used. The cost, they are not cost effective. The dosing usually is too high to be feasible unless you want to be drunk all day. What am I missing?
Well, or if you take the dose that's on the back of the bottle, it's probably not going to be very effective. I think that's it. These are the limitations. The expense and like who wants to do all this arithmetic? I don't. I don't want to do all this arithmetic.
I don't either. One of the things our mentor says is he will always put the stomach up as the best extractor of herbal medicine. So if you can just get the whole herb in your stomach, it's going to do the best job out of anything else out there. Chemistry, using hexane to do the extracts, teas, decoctions, tinctures. Your stomach's going to be the most effective at extracting what your body actually needs out of the herbs, which I think is so cool to remember.
I have never heard him say that, but I love it. And it sounds like something. It's a KPism for sure. So do we want to show like what we've got here? I have a demonstration.
Yes, walk us through it. Show
Let's
us
see what
the
I've got.
the tangibleness of what we're talking about and how it's relevant.
Okay. So those of you who are listening, I am holding a giant blue mason jar. This is a 2-liter mason jar that I painted blue to keep it dark. And gosh, I made this in 2018. So I make a Scintilla asiatica. It's a gotu kola tincture that I use to make my toner. I put a small amount of my toner in it. And I wanted to extract the bitter glycosides, the tannins, the flavonoids, like all of the things. So there's alcohol, water, and some glycerin and acid in this extra and in this liquid, in this menstruum. So before we got started, I poured some out. So this is 30 milliliters. I've got a little tiny 30 milliliter beaker. See how tiny that is? This is normally the amount that you would get in a 1 ounce bottle of tincture that you would buy at the health food store that's got the nice little dropper on it. Now, this is a 1 to 3 extract. So that means that there's 1 gram of gotu kola in 3 milliliters. So in this 30 milliliters, there are 10 grams. This is 10 grams. Here we go, 10 grams. An average dose of gotu kola on the low end daily is 30 grams. So that's probably about a cup of herb. And in order to get that in, you'd have to have 90 milliliters. I don't want to drink all of this. I would be so drunk. Even somebody who doesn't drink, this is like 3 shots of vodka.
And I'm getting kind of nauseated just like at the thought of drinking it. And the other thing is tinctures don't taste good. Let's not forget that like tinctures are not fun to take.
Well, I mean, goodness, does this look delicious?
No, for anyone listening, it looks like just black vile substance. I don't know. It doesn't it doesn't look tasty.
It smells like red wine. So, yeah, I mean, this is something that goes in my toner.
Yeah. So if you're looking to take gotu kola and you get a tincture, just the amount of herb that you're going to need to take is just so unrealistic in a tincture form to be effective.
Well, and wouldn't you say that that would be the case for most Chinese herbs?
I would say that's the case for most herbs, period.
Well, I think for some things like, okay, so if you take 6 grams of echinacea a day, you could actually get an effect. So 1 ounce of tincture over the course of time would not be bad for echinacea. Western herbs tend to be the strongest, the most potent herbs. And so they're going to work better in a tincture than Chinese herbs, which tend to be the least potent and require the highest doses for effectiveness. I don't know why that is, but that is the truth. That's what I was taught. Things that where therapeutic doses are 30, 60 to 90 grams a day, those are usually Chinese herbs. So why are we tincturing Chinese herbs?
With echinacea tincture, not to forget though, the polysaccharides aren't alcohol soluble. So with that with 6 grams of echinacea a day, yeah, you could do something, but you're losing half of your active constituents in a tincture form. But you're right. There are some herbs where it may be viable to get away with 6 grams a day, or if you're in a 1 to 3 tincture and you're getting 10 grams a day, then, that could be a big enough dose. But even an ounce of tincture at $15 to $30 a day cuts into the efficacy of it.
That polysaccharides can be chemically modified by acetylation, and that can change its solubility characteristics, so potentially increasing the solubility in alcohol, but that's never going to happen while someone's making a tincture. A tincture is a simple extraction method. Even if you're a big company making tinctures to sell at Whole Foods, it's still a simple extraction method.
Yes, and it's not like it's something people are actively putting a lot of research or effort into or to do it a different way because they don't need to, because people buy the thing that's on the shelves as is. So while there are ways to make this more viable with certain herbs, that's not where the resources are going because they don't need to go there. The tincture industry right now is a $1.5 billion industry. $1.5 billion industry. In the next, I think it was 15 years, it's supposed to double. It's just going to keep growing rampantly because people don't know better.
Mm. Well, and like you said, it seems so easy. It's so easy to carry a tincture around in my purse and think that I'm just gonna take a dropper full of tincture.
I agree.
But, so okay, if you love your tinctures, if you're listening to this episode and you love your tinctures and you carry your tinctures around in your purse and you're taking a couple of drops here and there and you're like, "Oh, fuck. This doesn't work." Oh, can I not say fuck?
I don't know.
Okay. And you're like, "Oh, shit. I've been fooled and all my tinctures don't work. What do I do? How am I going to get this tincture in that I really love and enjoy? My skullcap tincture that I take before bed, or my hawthorn tincture that I take for my that I take for my cardiovascular health, or my ginseng tincture that I take for my stamina." For any of those things, I like what Lila said about the stomach being the best extractor. And I take a lot of my stuff just in powder, right? I have powdered herbs and I stir them into water and I drink them down. And the other thing that I do, like with my Gotu Cola, for example, I have a French press. And at night before I go to bed, I will turn on my kettle. I will put a cup, which is about 30 grams of Gotu Cola, in my French press. I will pour the water over it and I will let it steep or infuse overnight. And when I get up the next day, I have my beautiful Gotu Cola tea that I drink throughout the day. And I can't carry it around in my purse, but I can put it in my water bottle and take it to my yoga class. So,
You
I
would,
mean,
you
there's
would, I'm sorry, you would be sitting in yoga class drinking Gotu Cola tea
actually my thing lately has been lemon ginger amla water. And people are like, "What are you drinking?" Because
because
there's
it
like all
probably
this
looks well.
powdered sediment at the bottom. I have to pick it up and shake it before I drink it.
Well, that's a
And
great idea.
well, I mean, the amla is so sour and the ginger is like I sweat a lot. I think it just helps with my circulation to do it while I'm moving. And the amla is so sour, but I'm so thirsty in yoga that it doesn't bother me. It's like still delicious.
Nice. Okay, so we covered a lot of ground today, and I think we got kind of technical. So I would like to know if there are any lingering questions out there, or people are hearing this and feeling attached to their tinctures and don't want to accept any of this information. Like, I would love to just continue a dialogue. So feel free to get in touch with us and tell us your thoughts and experience with tinctures and what you want to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, if you took your hawthorn tincture, a dropper full a day, and it changed your life, I want to know. I'm open minded.
Tell us your tincture miracle stories.
Yeah, or if you're like, what the hell is a menstruum? You use this word menstruum and I don't understand. Reach out to us. We're here. And if there's any questions that you have about herbal medicine or the health foods, the things you find on the health food store, or some of the things that are trending on Instagram or TikTok, and you want to hear what we have to say about it, let us know.
Yes, send us those reels that make you cock an eyebrow.
Well, you can send all of your reels to Lila.
Thank you guys for joining us, and we will see you next time.